A retired Marine found his K-9 partner. Sleeping in a junkyard, what he did next left the nation in tears. It was a bitterly quiet afternoon in late autumn when Jack Reynolds, a retired Marine of nearly 2 decades, parked his aging pickup truck alongside a crumbling sidewalk in the outskirts of East Lancaster. The wind whispered through the brittle trees, swirling dry leaves across the cracked pavement as Jack adjusted his worn flannel jacket and glanced down at a handwritten note used would ask a junkyard behind Fremont Street. His garage roof had started leaking again, and with the fixed income of a veteran, living alone buying new lumber was out of the question. Jack stepped out of his truck and moved slowly toward the rusting gate of the scrapyard. The air thick with the smell of oil and time-worn metal. He pushed the gate open its hinges, groaning like a protest, and stepped into the maze of old appliances, twisted metal, and shattered glass as he weaved between dented filing cabinets and collapsed fences, his boots crunching on broken ceramic tile. Something unexpected stopped him cold. A sound faint at first, almost like the wind, but then again a low, broken whimper. Jack paused, his eyes narrowing. It was coming from behind a stack of rusted sheet metal and car doors. He stepped closer carefully, pushing a panel aside, and that was when he saw the dog, if it could still be called that, emaciated beyond recognition, ribs jutting out from sunken skin, one leg twisted unnaturally beneath its body. Its fur was matted and patchy, smeared with mud and dry blood in its right. I was glazed over blind, but there, around its neck, was a collar faded, rusted, and clinging to what little fur remained. Jack leaned in closer and squinted, etched faintly into the metal plate were 6 letters that hit him like a bullet to the chest. Bullet the world. Around him went silent, his breath caught in his throat, his legs threatened to give out beneath him. He stared wide-eyed as the realization struck him with full force. This was not just any dog, this was his dog, Bullet, the bomb-sniffing K-9, who had served beside him during his last tour in Afghanistan. Bullet, who had saved his life twice and vanished in the chaos of an ambush after an improvised explosive device IED detonation. Bullet, whom they had presumed dead for 7 long years. Bullet, Jack whispered, barely audible, afraid the sound would break the fragile illusion. At the sound of his voice, the dog's one good ear twitched, then ever so slowly it tried to lift its head, its eyes one cloudy and the other a deep dim amber locked onto Jack's face. A soft growl, more breath, then sound came from its throat, and then, as if dragged by some distant memory, buried beneath layers of pain and time, Bullet tried to rise. His legs trembled violently under his weight, his breath rattled, but still he lifted his head higher and shakily raised his paw to his brow in the unmistakable gesture of a salute. Jack's knees buckled. He dropped beside Bullet, wrapping his arms around the frail body, not caring about the dirt or the blood. His fingers gripped tight to the fur he remembered as thick and strong, now brittle and sparse. His voice cracked as he spoke. You're alive, God. You're really alive. Tears spilled freely down his weathered cheeks as memories exploded in his mind. Bullet leaping through rubble, barking in the distance, just before a hidden mind was found, curling beside him under the stars of a foreign sky. The war had taken so much from them both, friends, years, pieces of their souls, but somehow in this forgotten corner of a junkyard, fate had returned one thing he never thought he would see again. And as he cradled Bullet against his chest, the old Marine realized something that made his heart clench with both gratitude and sorrow. His battle buddy had never stopped searching for him. Either Jack drove through the dusky streets with one hand on the steering wheel and the other gently resting on the fragile body lying on the passenger seat beside him. Bullet's breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of his chest a struggle. The lights of the emergency veterinary clinic glowed ahead like a lighthouse in a storm, and Jack pressed his foot harder on the gas. The door chimed as he pushed inside, carrying the limp dog in his arms. His voice, but urgent, I need help now. He's not just a dog, he's my partner. Within minutes, Bullet was laid out on a stainless steel examination table. Surrounded by a flurry of profession, Jack stood back, arms crossed tightly his, eyes never leaving Bullet's, motionless. Form, after what felt like hours, the vet, a calm middle-aged woman with gentle eyes, came to him and quietly delivered the news: severe malnutrition, old nerve, damage in his hind legs, likely from a blast injury. There are signs of systemic infection, and he shows all the markers of canine post-traumatic stress disorder. He's been through more trauma than most dogs ever. Will she pause before adding, softly, he's suffering, Mr. Reynolds. I have to be honest with you, euthanasia might be the kindest option. Jack stared at her, then slowly turned to look at Bullet. The dog was awake now, just barely as one, good eye glinting in the fluorescent light, and in that eye Jack did not see surrender. He saw pain, yes, exhaustion, yes, but beyond all that there was something familiar, that same unwavering will that had carried them through mortar fire and desert storms, that stubborn refusal to give up. No, Jack said, his voice firm and final, he's not ready to go, and neither am I. Jack brought Bullet home that night, wrapped in a thick blanket, and placed him gently on an old mattress in the corner of his living room. Over the days that followed, Jack transformed his quiet home into a recovery ward. He cooked fresh chicken and rice every morning, sat beside Bullet through every meal, hand feeding him at first when he was too weak to lift his head. He massaged Bullet's legs to ease the nerve damage, learned simple canine physical therapy exercises from videos online, and even repurposed a kid's wagon so Bullet could go outside and feel the sun again. Every night, Jack slept on the couch beside him, one hand always within reach of Bullet's paw. He spoke to him constantly, telling him stories from their old days together, whispering reassurances that he was safe now that the war was over. Weeks passed. One morning, as Jack prepared breakfast, he heard a soft sound behind him, a faint thump. He turned and saw a Bullet still lying down, but this time his tail moved just once, then again it wagged, slow, uncertain, but undeniable. Jack dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion. It was the first time Bullet had shown joy in over 7 years. Hope took root. Bullet began standing shakily at first, but gaining strength. The infection cleared his fur, began to grow back patch by patch. His eyes lost the haze of fear and regained a spark of recognition, but healing was never linear. One night, just as Jack was drifting off, a sudden crashing sound jolted him awake. He rushed to the hallway and found Bullet cowering in a corner, breathing heavily, eyes wide with panic. He had knocked over a lamp and was now slamming his head repeatedly against the wall as if trying to escape an invisible enemy. Hey, buddy, it's me," Jack said, dropping to the floor and wrapping his arms around Bullet. The dog trembled violently in his grip, letting out pitiful whines that tore at Jack's heart. He did not scold him, did not push him away. Instead, he whispered, "You're not alone, you hear me? You're not the only one who wakes up screaming." Jack gently rested his head against Bullet's and began talking. He told Bullet about his own nightmares, about the friends he had lost, the sounds that haunted him at night, the hollow silence that had filled his life since the war. He spoke until Bullet's breathing slowed, until the trembling stopped, and they both sat there leaning into each other, two broken warriors holding on from that night forward. Something changed. Jack no longer saw Bullet as the dog he was trying to save. He saw him as the only soul who truly understood the weight he carried. And in Bullet's eyes, Jack saw the same. They were not just healing together, they were surviving one night at a time. By early spring, the cold edge had begun to lift from the mornings, and so had the heaviness that once hung over Jack's home. Sunlight streamed through the windows with a different warmth now, and in its glow, Bullet no longer looked like a ghost of war. His fur had regained color and sheen, his body stronger with each passing week. He could now walk. Without help, his gait still stiff, but steady, and then came the day Jack stood in the yard with a treat in his hand and quietly said, "Sit." Bullet paused ears, perked slightly, then slowly lowered his body. "Good boy," Jack whispered, his throat tightening over the next few days. They began revisiting old commands: sit, stay, lie down, sniff, and search. Bullet responded slower than he once had, but the knowledge was there buried beneath years of pain and neglect, and when he barked for the first time again, it was as if a spark had been reignited in both of them. Each morning Jack clipped on Bullet's collar, now cleaned and restored, and together they walked the quiet streets of their neighbors, who once only nodded and now stopped to talk, to smile, to pet the dog they had seen, half dead just months before Bullet took it all in stride, his tail wagging like a flag of quiet victory. On Saturdays, Jack and Bullet began attending the local veterans group at the community center. Jack had avoided those gatherings for years, unwilling to talk, unwilling to remember, but now with Bullet at his side, he felt a strength he had not known in a long time. The other veterans quickly took to Bullet, calling him Sarge or Captain Pup. He wandered among them, laying his head in laps, offering the silent comfort only a dog could give. Within weeks, Bullet had become the heart of the group. Men who had not spoken in years began opening up when Bullet sat near. He did not need words. He had presence, understanding. He had survived what they had survived, and one day a local reporter stopped by the veterans meeting. She had heard whispers about a war dog who came back from the dead. After an hour with Jack and Bullet, she left with tears in her eyes and a notebook full of quotes. 2 days later, the headline appeared on the front page of the town paper: "The Marine and His Bulletproof Buddy, a story of war loss and redemption." Photos of Jack and Bullet walking side by side, training in the yard, Bullet saluting with his paw, quickly spread online within days. National news outlets picked it up. Social media flooded with comments from veterans, dog lovers, and ordinary people moved by the story of an unbreakable bond. People began calling Bullet a symbol not just of survival, but of loyalty, resilience, and the healing power of love. His image appeared on veteran support pages, animal rescue campaigns, and even school posters about bravery. Jack was stunned by the attention, but Bullet remained unfazed, content to curl up on the porch beside him each evening, eyes alert, ears twitching in the wind. The world had changed for both of them. The silence was no longer wait, but a rest between heartbeats, between moments of peace and the new life they were building together. The night was still, unusually quiet for their part of town. Jack had dozed off in his recliner with the television humming softly in the background. Bullet curled up faithfully at his feet. The windows were closed, doors locked as always, but something crept through the silence, something neither of them could have expected. Shortly after midnight, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the kitchen. Jack stirred, blinking groggy as his instincts kicked in. He stood stiff from sleep and reached for the small flashlight by the door. Bullet's ears twitched and a low growl began rumbling in his throat. Jack moved cautiously down the hallway, the beam of his flashlight sweeping across framed photographs and medals hanging crooked on the wall. When he stepped into the kitchen, a shadow moved fast, a flash of black, a sudden pain, and then darkness. The intruder had hit him with a heavy wrench, knocking him unconscious before he could utter a word. Jack collapsed to the floor with a dull thud. The man, dressed in dark clothes and gloves, rifled through drawers and cabinets with practiced haste. He had heard rumors of the decorated Marine down the street, the man who kept his war medals, field knives, and rare memorabilia from a lifetime of service in his modest home. To him, it was a quick score until he heard a deep guttural snarl behind him. Bullet stood in the doorway, old but unyielding body braced, one paw lifted slightly off the ground, favoring his weaker leg, his lips peeled back over yellowed teeth. For a moment, the thief hesitated. He had not expected a dog, especially not one that looked half crippled, but Bullet did not hesitate. With a burst of energy born not from strength but from purpose, he lunged. The man shouted in surprise as Bullet latched onto his forearm, driving him back against the counter. They struggled, violently crashing into furniture. The thief managed to stab Bullet once with a pocket knife, deep, painful, but Bullet held on, refusing to let go, blood-soaked into his fur. But he did not back down. He bit, snarled, barked with a fury not seen since the battlefield, his every instinct screaming to protect Jack. The man tried to flee, but Bullet knocked him down, holding him pinned, jaws clenched around the thief's arm until sirens blared in the distance. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was writhing on the floor, screaming for help, and Bullet was lying beside Jack's body, panting heavily, his blood mingling with the shattered glass. The officers called an ambulance. Immediately, Jack was breathing, but unconscious. Bullet was barely alive. A paramedic knelt beside him, gently lifting his limp body. As they were loaded into the same ambulance, Jack stirred, opening his eyes to see a familiar shape lying next to him. Motionless. "No," he whispered hoarsely. No, not again." He struggled to sit, his hands reaching for Bullet inside the ambulance. Jack pulled Bullet into his arms, cradling him as he had in the junkyard months before. The dog's breath was faint, his body cold. Jack pressed his forehead to Bullet's and whispered voice, thick with grief, "Don't you leave me again, buddy. You held the line. You always do." The paramedics worked around them, but Jack barely noticed. He held on, refusing to let go, hoping against hope that the dog who had saved his life once in the war and again here at home was not about to leave him one last time. Bullet survived. The surgery was long, risky, and uncertain. The knife wound had cut deep, and the blood loss had pushed him to the edge. The veterinarians warned Jack that even if Bullet made it through, he might never walk again. But once more, as he had done so many times before, Bullet defied the odds. When Jack was finally allowed into the recovery room, Bullet was lying still, heavily bandaged, missing one leg, but alive as remaining. Eye flicked open as Jack entered, and the tired tail gave the faintest thump. That was all Jack needed. The story of Bullet's heroism swept across the country like wildfire. News outlets picked it up from the local reports and ran national segments about the veteran dog who fought one last battle. Viewers cried in living rooms from coast to coast as they watched footage of Bullet limping bravely through the front yard, Jack steadying him with a makeshift sling. Social media exploded with tributes, messages of support, and artwork drawn by children. People from all walks of life were touched by the story of a broken dog who had come back to save the man who saved him. And then came the call from Washington. Bullet had been selected to receive the Presidential Medal of Animal Valor, an honor reserved for the rarest acts of courage and loyalty displayed by service animals. Jack hesitated at first. He never sought attention, especially not on national stages, but this was not about him. This was for Bullet. The day of the ceremony, the grand hall of the Capitol was filled with officials, veterans, families, and hundreds of reporters. Bullet, draped in a blue vest adorned with small service patches, stood at the edge of the stage. Beside Jack, the dog had trained hard in rehab, learning to move with 3 legs. And now he stepped forward with slow, deliberate determination. As they reached center stage, Jack knelt and gave the command, "Salute." Bullet paused and raised his paw, not as high or sharp as he once could, but true and proud. The crowd rose to their feet. The sound of applause thundered through the chamber. Cameras flashed, tears fell freely. Even the president, standing just a few feet away, wiped his eyes. Jack stepped to the microphone, steadying his voice as he looked out over the sea of faces. "I have served beside men I would follow into fire. I have buried brothers who gave everything for this country, but none stood taller in my eyes than the one beside me today. he's more than a dog. He's a Marine, and he never left a man. Behind there was no speech that could top it, none. Needed the ceremony ended, not with pomp and protocol, but with silence, a respectful, reverent silence as Jack and Bullet exited the stage. Together side by side weeks later life returned to its quiet rhythm. Jack and Bullet often spent their evenings on the old wooden bench Jack had refinished, himself now placed perfectly beneath a sprawling oak tree in the backyard. They would sit for hours not needing words. Jack with a cup of coffee, or sometimes bourbon in hand, Bullet resting his head on Jack's boot, eyes half closed, ears still tuned to every sound. And one evening, just as the sky turned to gold and the last light of the sun spilled across the fields, Jack reached down and placed his hand gently on Bullet's head. No salute, no command, just gratitude. Two warriors, two survivors, watching the world grow quiet, finally at peace. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of loyalty, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between a Marine and his four-legged comrade. Bullet's story reminds us that heroes come in many forms. Some walk on two legs, others on three, but all leave paw prints on our hearts. If this story touched you, if it brought a tear to your eye or warmth to your soul, we invite you to subscribe to Amazing Paw Stories, where we bring you true heartwarming tales of animal courage, second chances, and the love that only our furry companions can give. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share it with someone who believes in the power of loyalty, because here at Amazing Paw Stories, every paw has a story, and some are nothing short of legendary. Thank you for watching.